Parents demanded I give them my apartment because, "You'll get it back when we die." I refused. They changed their will out of spite. Plot twist, they could have bought 3 apartments with their own house money. Original post. I never thought I'd be writing something like this. I'm a 32-year-old man, sitting in my apartment tonight, trying to make sense of how my relationship with my parents imploded over the last 3 years. It started with what seemed like a reasonable conversation about aging and ended with me being disinherited. Maybe typing it out will help me understand if I'm the bad guy here. Because some nights, I genuinely don't know. Let me give you the background first, because context matters. My parents aren't wealthy people, but they're not poor either. My father is 63 years old now, and my mother is 60. They met young, married younger, and built a life brick by brick. My dad worked factory jobs for 30 years, shift work, overtime, weekends when they offered it. My mom cleaned offices in the evenings so she could be home when I got out of school. They weren't educated people in the formal sense, but they were smart about money. They saved. They sacrificed. And when I was 6 years old, they bought a modest house in a suburban neighborhood about 45 minutes outside the city. That house took them 25 years to pay off. 25 years of mortgage payments, of cutting coupons, of taking one vacation every 3 years instead of every year. They raised me with values. Work hard, save money, build your own life. Don't expect handouts. Earn what you have. Those lessons stuck with me. I worked my first job at 16, bagging groceries, then retail, then waiting tables through college. I put myself through school studying accounting. My parents couldn't pay my tuition, and I never expected them to. By the time I graduated, I had student loans, but I also had a marketable degree and a solid work ethic. I climbed the ladder at an accounting firm, saved aggressively, lived in cheap apartments with roommates. At 29 years old, I bought my own apartment, a modest one-bedroom in the city center, close to my office. $156,000. Every penny mine. My parents said they were proud of me. My dad shook my hand at the closing and told me I'd done everything right. My mom cried and said I'd exceeded all their dreams for me. That was 3 years ago. That was before they decided they wanted it for themselves. The shift started gradually. Comments here and there when they visited. Such a nice location you have here. So close to the medical center, isn't it? Public transport right outside your door. Must be convenient. I agreed with all of it. That's why I bought the place. I'd spent months researching neighborhoods, comparing commute times, weighing proximity to amenities against cost per square foot. I was proud of the choice I'd made. My parents visited every few weeks those first months. Helped me paint, helped me assemble furniture from IKEA. My dad showed me how to fix a dripping faucet. My mom brought casseroles for my freezer. It felt like the culmination of everything they taught me. Their son, independent, successful, standing on his own 2 feet in a home he owned. Then the comments got pointed. "We're not getting younger," my mom would say, looking around my living room. "What if something happens and we're stuck way out in the suburbs?" My dad started mentioning his knees, his back, how the garden was getting harder to maintain. "The house is too much work for us now," they'd say, sighing dramatically. I offered to help. I could come out on weekends, help with the yard work. I could hire someone to handle the heavy lifting. I could contribute to modifications that would make the house easier for them to manage. That wasn't what they wanted. The real request came at a family dinner. We'd finished eating at their house, my mom's pot roast, the same recipe she'd made my whole life, when my dad cleared his throat. That sound meant serious conversation was coming. "Son, your mother and I have been thinking about our future." He folded his hands on the table. "We're getting old. The house is too much work. We need to be in the city, close to hospitals, close to everything." I nodded, expecting a discussion about selling their house, maybe buying a smaller city apartment. Made sense. They had equity. They had options. Instead, "We want you to transfer your apartment to our names." I blinked. Surely I'd misheard. "You're young single," my mom added quickly. "You can rent somewhere. Or stay with us in the house until we don't need the apartment anymore. Then you'll inherit it back. It all works out." I tried to understand what they were actually proposing. "You want me to give you my apartment and live in your house until you die, then inherit my own apartment back?" My mom nodded like this made perfect sense. "Exactly. You'll get it eventually anyway. All our assets go to you. You're our only child. Why should you wait until we're dead? This way, we get the apartment when we need it. You get everything when we're gone. It's just, rearranging the timeline. Rearranging the timeline. I've thought about that phrase a lot since then. As if my 30s, 40s, and 50s were just empty space to be rearranged around their convenience. My dad added the emotional layer. We won't be around forever, son. Every year we have left is precious. Do you want us to spend those years struggling in a suburb, far from medical care, worrying about what happens if we have an emergency? Or do you want us comfortable, safe, in your apartment that you'll get back anyway? My mom started crying softly. We sacrificed so much for you. Worked jobs we hated. Gave up vacations. Put you through school. And now we're asking for help in our old age and you're hesitating. My mind was racing. There was so much wrong with this. First, they're not that old. 63 and 60 is not elderly. My dad still works part-time at a hardware store because he gets bored at home. My mom spends hours in her garden every week. They're healthy. No serious conditions. No emergencies. No reason to believe they need to be near hospitals any more than any other healthy adult. Second, their house is fine. 45 minutes from the city is not far from medical care. There's a hospital 20 minutes from their house. They live in a suburb, not a wilderness. Third, they have assets. A house worth about $180,000, fully paid off. They could sell it tomorrow and buy a city apartment with cash left over. And fourth, the biggest problem, the "you'll inherit it anyway" argument is manipulation disguised as logic. You'll inherit it anyway. That's what they said. As if inheritance is a contract. As if eventually and now are the same thing. I could wait 25 years for that, eventually. Give up my apartment in my 30s, live in their suburban house, wait for them to die in my 50s or 60s. That's not inheritance. That's hostage negotiation with death as the deadline. I spoke carefully. I understand you want to be in the city. But you have options. You could sell the house and buy a city apartment. You could rent a city place while keeping the house. You could. My dad interrupted. Sell the house. The house we worked 25 years to pay off? The house with your mother's garden? You want us to sell our home so you can keep your apartment. I want you to use your assets for your needs instead of asking me to give up mine. The guilt tsunami hit then. My mom went full emotional. I can't believe what I'm hearing. We gave you life. We raised you, fed you, clothed you, educated you. And when we ask for one thing, in our old age, you talk about assets and options like we're strangers. Is this what our son became? A man who sees his parents as a transaction. My dad, we taught you to work hard, to save, to build. And you did. You built that apartment. With values we gave you. And now you won't share it with the people who made you who you are. Mom cried and asked if I see them as a transaction. But they're the ones who brought up inheritance. They're the ones calculating who gets what when. They made it a transaction when they offered my future inheritance as payment for my current apartment. I just refused to accept their terms. I tried to explain. You keep saying, you'll inherit it anyway. But that's not a guarantee, it's a prediction. You could live 30 more years. You could have medical expenses that drain everything. You could change your mind and leave it to charity. Inheritance is what might happen after you die. You're asking me to give up what I have now based on what I might get later. That's not a fair trade. That's gambling with my security. My dad stood up, angry. Gambling. We're your parents. Not strangers. Not business partners. Parents. Everything we have will be yours. We're asking you to share one thing, temporarily, until we die. And you're talking about gambling. It's not temporary if it lasts 25 years, I said. It's not sharing if I give and you take. And using your future deaths as leverage isn't love, it's emotional blackmail. Give us the apartment or feel guilty until we die. That's what you're really saying. Dad said they might die any day. They're 63 and 60. Healthy. Active. Dad still works. Mom gardens for hours. They're not dying, they're leveraging the concept of death to take what they want now. We might die isn't an argument. It's manipulation with mortality as a prop. I left that night. The drive home was silent, my mind spinning. Did I just refuse to help my elderly parents? No, I refused to give away my apartment based on death-based promises. Did I dishonor them? No, I asked them to use their own assets instead of taking mine. Was I selfish? I genuinely didn't know anymore. The guilt was crushing, but the logic was clear. Their request made no sense except as a power play. They wanted my apartment because it was easier than selling their house. They were using old age and death and inheritance as weapons to avoid making their own hard choices. Update 1. The campaign begins. Over the following weeks, my parents launched a pressure campaign. My dad started calling with health updates. Suddenly, every minor ache was reported in detail. My back is acting up again. Hard to maintain the house. If only we were in a convenient city apartment. He'd never mentioned his back this much in 30 years. My mom sent articles to my phone. Stories about elderly people dying because emergency services couldn't reach them in time. Pieces about the importance of being near medical facilities as you age. Passive-aggressive but unmistakable. Then they started telling the extended family. The version they told was edited. In their story, I was the ungrateful son who refused to help his aging parents. They mentioned that I had a nice city apartment while they struggled in the suburbs. They talked about wanting to be safe in their final years, and how I said no. Nobody in the family mentioned that my parents had a paid-off house worth $180,000. Nobody mentioned they could sell it and buy 3 city apartments if they wanted. Nobody mentioned they were healthy 60-somethings, not dying 90-somethings. The story was carefully edited to make me the villain. It was working. Cousins reached out with thinly veiled judgment. Is it true you won't let your parents live in your apartment? An aunt called to remind me that family helps family. An uncle suggested I was being selfish during their golden years. They have a $180,000 house. Paid off. They could sell it tomorrow and buy a city apartment with cash. But they won't abandon the memories. So the solution is for me to abandon my apartment? Their memories matter more than my present. Their comfort requires my sacrifice, but not theirs. I realized I needed professional perspective. I couldn't trust my own judgment anymore. Not with my parents' voices in my head telling me I was selfish, ungrateful, a bad son. I needed someone outside the situation to tell me if I was crazy or if they were. Update 2. The professional consultation. I talked to a financial advisor first. Explained the situation objectively, or as objectively as I could. Her response was immediate and blunt. If you transfer property to them now, you lose control entirely, she said. They could sell it. They could refinance it. They could leave it to someone else in their will. They could live 30 more years, and you'd have given up your home for 3 decades based on a verbal promise of inheritance. Never transfer property based on future inheritance promises. If you're going to do something like this, get it in writing with legal protections, or don't do it at all. Then I consulted an estate lawyer. I explained the "you'll inherit it anyway" argument. He laughed bitterly. I see this constantly, he said. Parents use inheritance as control. Do what we want now, you'll get it when we die. But wills can be changed. Assets can be spent. Medical costs can drain everything. Long-term care can cost $15,000 a month. One serious illness and a lifetime of savings disappears. Promises made at 60 don't bind decisions at 80. He leaned forward. One of my clients gave his house to his parents for this exact reason. They lived another 22 years. Then they left everything to a church. He got nothing. The verbal promise was worth nothing. Never give up assets based on inheritance promises without legal contracts. I asked about the legal contracts option. He walked me through what that would look like: a life estate, where they could live in the apartment but I retained ownership. A trust arrangement. A documented agreement with witnesses and legal standing. These options exist, he said. The question is whether your parents will accept them. In my experience, when people reject legal documentation of their promises, it's because they want the freedom to break those promises later. Armed with this information, I went back to my parents with a counter-proposal. I've thought about your situation, I told them at their kitchen table. If you genuinely need a city apartment for health reasons, here's what makes sense. Option 1. Sell the house, buy a city apartment, keep the difference as a retirement cushion. Option 2. Rent a city apartment while keeping the house as an asset. Option 3. We create a legal agreement where I retain ownership but you have living rights until certain conditions. What I won't do is transfer ownership based on verbal promises about inheritance. They rejected everything. Selling the house was abandoning our memories. Renting was wasting money at our age. Legal agreements were treating family like strangers. They wanted my apartment transferred to their names, based on nothing but the promise that I'd get it back when they were dead. Every alternative that protected my interests was rejected. The only acceptable solution was complete surrender of my asset. This told me everything about what this was really about. Not safety. Not convenience. Not health. Control. Ownership. Taking what I built. Update 3. The Revelation and the Ultimatum. During one heated argument, my mom slipped. "Your cousin's parents live in his apartment," she said. "Why can't we? Do you think you're better than them?" I investigated. She was right. My cousin's parents had moved into his apartment, and he'd moved back to their house. But here's what my mom didn't mention. My cousin's parents sold their house, gave him the money as compensation, and the entire arrangement was legally documented. It wasn't, "Give us your apartment" on a promise. It was a fair exchange with legal protection. Cousin's parents had the same arrangement, but with legal contracts and fair exchange. They sold their house, gave my cousin the money, documented everything. My parents wanted the same outcome with none of the fairness. They wanted to take my apartment and offer a verbal promise about a will they could change any time. That's not family helping family. That's family scamming family. When I pointed this out, my father's face went cold. "If you don't help us," he said slowly, "don't expect anything from us when we die. We'll change our will. Leave everything to charity. You'll get nothing. Is that what you want? To lose your inheritance over an apartment you'll get back anyway?" There it was. The ultimatum I'd been waiting for. Give up the apartment or give up the inheritance. Either way, they win and I lose. I felt the trap closing. But I also felt something else. Clarity. For weeks, I'd been questioning myself. Was I really the selfish one? Was I really failing my parents in their time of need? But this ultimatum revealed everything. This wasn't about health or safety or convenience. This was about control. About punishment for disobedience. A parent who genuinely loved their child wouldn't threaten to disinherit them over a real estate disagreement. A parent who genuinely loved their child would find another solution. Sell the house, rent something, compromise somehow. But my parents weren't looking for solutions. They were looking for submission. "Then change your will," I said. "Leave everything to charity." I built my life on what I earned, not what I might inherit. That apartment isn't a down payment on your estate. It's my home that I bought with my money. If your love for me depends on me giving you my apartment, then it was never love. It was investment with expected returns. I'm your son, not your retirement plan. My mother was crying. My father's face was stone. The kitchen that had hosted every birthday, every holiday, every celebration of my life felt suddenly cold. I stood up. "I hope you reconsider. I hope you realize that there are options that don't require me to give up my home. But I won't be blackmailed into surrendering what I've earned. Not even by you." I left. That was the last real conversation we've had. Update 4. The Fallout. My parents followed through. They actually changed their will. Made a charity the primary beneficiary. Then they made sure I knew about it. My father called specifically to inform me. "We've done it. You get nothing now. Hope the apartment was worth your inheritance." I was hurt. I'd be lying if I said otherwise. But I was also clarified. They were willing to disinherit their only child because he wouldn't give them his apartment. That told me everything about their priorities. I was never loved unconditionally. I was loved as an asset to be managed. And when the asset stopped performing as expected, it was written off. When I refused, they disinherited me. Actually changed their will. Over an apartment they wanted but didn't need. They were willing to cut off their only child completely because he wouldn't give them something they could have gotten themselves by selling their house. That's not parental love. That's ownership mentality. I was an asset that depreciated when I stopped performing. The first year was the hardest. Holiday invitations stopped coming. Family gatherings happened without me. The relatives who'd heard my parents' version kept their distance. I was, in the family narrative, the ungrateful son who abandoned his parents in their time of need. But I had my apartment. I had my career. I had my integrity. Update 5. 3 years later. It's been 3 years since that dinner. My parents are still in their house. Still healthy. Still 45 minutes from the city. The emergencies they warned about never materialized. The hospitals they needed to be near haven't been needed. They're fine. They were always going to be fine. The whole thing was a pressure campaign to take my apartment using old age and death as props in a manipulation play. I keep track through family grapevine, through social media posts from relatives, through the occasional awkward encounter at a wedding or funeral. They're doing fine. Better than fine, actually. My dad still works his part-time shifts at the hardware store. He posts photos on Facebook sometimes, helping a customer pick out lumber, demonstrating how to use a power tool. He looks robust, energetic. Not a man who needed to be near hospitals. My mom still tends her garden. The tomatoes she grew last summer were apparently spectacular, according to my aunt. She still hosts Sunday dinners, still makes her pot roast, still holds court at the head of the table I used to sit at. They travel occasionally, a cruise last year, from what I heard through the family grapevine. A trip to see the Grand Canyon before that. Not exactly the frail elderly people who needed to be near medical care. They don't speak to me much now. Their choice. Their punishment for my disobedience. Christmas cards stopped. Birthday calls stopped. I'm a stranger who shares their DNA. I miss them sometimes. Miss who I thought they were. Don't miss who they showed themselves to be. The apartment is still mine. The career is still growing. The life I built brick by brick, with the values they taught me, ironically, is still standing. Some inheritances cost too much. This one would have cost my 30s, my 40s, maybe my 50s. Would have cost my home. Would have cost my self-respect. Final update. Tonight. I redecorated the apartment last year. Took down the photos of my parents, the gifts they'd given me over the years. Clean slate. New chapter. Tonight, my phone buzzed. It was my dad. First contact in months. His voice sounded older. Tired. Your mother is in the hospital. Nothing serious, just tests. But we're in the city hospital, the one near your apartment. I thought you should know. Silence stretched between us. I hope she's okay, I said. I meant it. I'm not heartless. Let me know if you need anything. I didn't offer the apartment. Didn't offer to visit. Didn't bridge the gap they created. That's it, my dad said. Your mother is in the hospital and that's all you say? You disinherited me because I wouldn't give you my apartment, I replied. You told the family I abandoned you. You chose this distance. I'm offering what I can. If that's not enough, I understand. But I'm not reopening a wound you created. He hung up. I sat in my apartment. My apartment. Still mine. Outside my window, the city lights blinked against the dark sky. The medical center my parents said they needed to be near was visible in the distance, its red cross glowing. My mother was there now, getting tests. Routine tests, apparently. Nothing serious. I hoped it stayed that way. Despite everything, I hoped she was healthy. I hoped they both lived another 30 years. I hoped their gamble, the gamble that they could manipulate me into giving up my home, didn't haunt them too much. But I wasn't going to be the one to fix what they broke. The bridge between us didn't collapse by accident. They took a sledgehammer to it when they chose a real estate transaction over a relationship. They made their priorities clear. Now they have to live with them. And so do I. Final reflection. They used death before they were dying and inheritance before they were dead. Turned, eventually, into now, and might into must. They said I'd get the apartment back when they die, as if death is a business transaction with a known closing date. I could have waited 30 years. Given up my 30s, 40s, 50s to living in their house, waiting for them to die so I could get my apartment back. That's not inheritance. That's life on layaway. They're still alive. Still healthy. Still in their house they wouldn't sell to buy their own city apartment. They have options they won't use because they wanted my option instead. When I said no, they disinherited me. Made it official. Put it in writing. Their only child, cut off because he wouldn't give up his home based on a death promise. Some parents love their children. Some parents manage assets that happen to be people. I know which kind I have now. The apartment stays mine. The inheritance goes to charity. And somewhere between those two facts is the entire story of what my parents' love was actually worth. I'd rather have the apartment I earned than the inheritance that came with conditions. At least the apartment never threatened to disown me for having boundaries. Some things you inherit. Some things you build. I built this. It's mine. And no amount of guilt about mortality will change that. TLDR, parents, 63M, 60F, demanded I transfer my apartment to them because you'll inherit it anyway when we die. They have a paid-off $180,000 house they could sell but won't. When I refused and offered alternatives, they disinherited me. 3 years later, they're still healthy, still in their house, and I'm still in my apartment. They used death and inheritance as weapons. I refused to surrender. The relationship is broken, but my integrity is intact.